Welcome to our 2026 Directors Closeup Spirit Awards edition. I'm Sarah Berkovich. I'm Senior Manager of Film Education at Film Independent. So thanks to this year's incredible supporters of the Directors Closeup, the Directors Guild of America, SAG Indie, and IMDb Pro. And thanks to our 2026 Film Independent Spirit Award supporter, premier sponsor Lavazza Coffee, principal sponsor IMDb Pro, and our official partner Fiji Water. We appreciate their support and devotion to the film and independent film community. Today we are joined by this year's Best New Scripted Series creators who are going to tell us what it takes to bring new and exciting stories to audiences. All screeners are now available if you haven't gotten a chance to watch these films and shows yet. Also, before we begin, if you'd like to ask questions during today's webinar, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to type in your questions, and we'll get to as many of these as we can during the panel. Here with us today are Jack Thorne of ADOLESCENCE.
Hello.
Hi, Jack.
Hi.
Joe Bennett and Steve Hely of Common Side Effects.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. And Khaou of MR.LOVERMAN.
Hi
Hello.
there. Hi there.
Our moderator this afternoon is Tanuj Chopra, director and showrunner of Delhi Crime.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Tanuj. All right, so take it away, please.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys and everybody. Welcome to this amazing panel. We are very lucky to share this space with some creators and directors of unique, rigorously researched, creative, smart, topical shows. Before we even begin, you guys all must be congratulated at this stage. Taking a project through from concept to completion is no small thing. It's toxic to your health and life and hazardous to everything you do. So I don't know how many people congratulate you at this point of the process to just surviving. I'm sure they're giving you tons of kudos for everything you've done. But my first thing I want to say is congrats for surviving. And you're here. And
Thank you.
and you guys are all having such amazing runs right now. And I could talk about these shows with you guys, each of you, for an hour on my own. I wish I could, and I will. I'm going to reach out to all of you. But I'll start with sort of a general question that, sort of can get us into your thinking around it. And, all of your shows are so, very tonally specific, emotional, confident, not over explained. There's such a unique voice at the heart of all of your shows, and often conveying what you're really trying to do when you're maybe not fitting into a format or template is very challenging to studios, to networks, as you work your material up the ladder. Can you talk about what your approach was to your material specifically in terms of um, conveying your approach to the material? Was there a gap between the show you saw in your head versus what you had to talk, how you spoke about the show? And I'd love to start with Jack Thorne of Adolescence.
Uh, there wasn't, what there was a gap between what we wanted to do and what the people that commissioned us to write the script wanted us to do. And they ultimately decided that they didn't want to do it. And then we had to shop it somewhere else. And we were lucky that Netflix came in and saved us. Our thing, from the first conversation I had with Stephen to the end of the show, I think it stayed remarkably close to what we were aiming for, which was an exploration of why young boys in my country were harming young girls, and every step along the way we were asking that question of why, and thankfully we were able to deliver a show that stayed close to what we wanted to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, I'll take it a step. I'll ask you a little bit more. You've very selectively chosen to show certain story points, not show certain story points. You've made decisions about these amazing one takes, and you've made maybe choices that aren't as conventional in typical TV, or even if you want to even call it a crime shot, a drama. Um, how do you go about sort of getting these less popular choices across to people you're collaborating with? Do you have any techniques, or was it an issue on the show,
No, it wasn't. It genuinely wasn't. It genuinely wasn't. Uh, it was more of an issue for me than the people I was working with. So I was working with Stephen and Phil, who had just made this show, Boiling. He made this beautiful film, Boiling Point, that was a one-shot process, and I was coming into that arrangement, and they were teaching me about the one-shot. The thing that I fell in love with when I was holding the pen was the joy of the incomplete. And I think this is, I've spent 20 odd years writing shows that try and tell complete stories, and uh, falling into the traps that come with telling complete stories. And that ability to go in episode 2 of our show, for instance, it's all about a detective trying to find a knife. Or that seems to be what it's about, and then it trips into other areas, and not once do we reveal whether he ever found that knife. He ends the episode not doing that, having found other things, and then the rest of the show we don't dwell in that question. And our audience sort of seem to understand that, I think, a bit. I mean, I get people coming up and asking all sorts of questions about the bits we missed out, but actually, it feels like people roll with the punches that we were sending their way, and understood the logic of our storytelling. And it took me a moment to understand it, but now I'm trying to take that into everything I do.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's almost like this idea of completion comes from, what you're not showing, the knife, what you don't
Yeah.
tell, and you kind of allow the audience to complete it in their heads, which is going to be far more powerful probably than.
I mean, Chekhov's gun obviously is a
Mm.
is a very important role, a very important rule. But actually, we had a gun in our show, and we didn't always reveal what should happen with that gun. And actually, I think that seemed to be something that people were excited by, which was nice.
It's nice to hear that from you, actually, because I did notice the gun, and I did wonder when the gun was going off. I had the full checkoff question in my head, and of just so much going on in the show, that it was a moment that went away. But um, yeah, that really comes to. I'm going to come back and actually ask you some stuff about these one takes very, very soon. I want to find out from Hong as well, with Mr. Loverman. The kind of what was sort of communicated. And Hong, you're the director, right, of the show,
Yeah,
not
I
the
am the
show,
director.
and you're working with the showrunner
Yeah, Nathaniel Price is the writer. Yeah, yeah.
and the writer. So, again, I asked the same question. How did you convey the material of your show, or the approach to your show, to studios and executives in the process of development? And what did you communicate?
It's interesting. I'm trying to remember what I did say. I mean, when I went up for the interview to get the gig, I remember I prepped like a bastard for 2 weeks, in terms of things that I was thinking about, from, all kind of inspired from Nathaniel's writing and Bernadine's book. Um, it's, I mean, I think it really comes from the writing, and in a 30-minute episode, there was, Nathaniel would take us from laughter, joy, and then to the pit of despair. And I felt, because it had all of these amazing elements. And when I joined, Lenny James was on board already, and I felt, oh, I could, if anything else happened, we could always just put a camera on Lenny and
Yeah.
it will be fine, right?
Totally.
And he will lead us through it. And that was always kind of my get out of jail card if I had any emergency. Um, so it was really to kind of maybe bolster what was in the writing and give it a bit more of a visual language, like between the different timelines. I'm always trying to find an emotional reason why the camera moves the way it does, and I remember trying to think, brainstorm with Raimi, the DOP, how we can just bolster the emotion with a visual language. And but to be honest, I think I'm sure you all know. To be honest, after during, I mean, I think the show has it changes so much in the edit. It really wasn't. Yes, in a really good way. I mean, yeah. So some of the story point shift, and yeah, it's a yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I do have questions about editorial changes, but I found, the approach, and maybe this might be, part of your style is it's so observant and patient, and this idea of keeping the camera on Lenny James, but also just allowing actors and allowing the space to form and the kind of trust and stillness and um, power you bring to it. It feels like a very it might be your style, but it feels like a very thoughtful approach as well to the material, and maybe just working with the talent. When you talent like this, it's like just turn on the camera. But I found that some of the best moments were often very quiet ones, and not
yeah. I mean,
directorially loud ones.
I'm a big fan of watch when you have an actor this good. I'm a huge fan of just watching them and seeing the rising emotion because they can give you so much more. They can color in so much more than what's there as well. And I think if anything in the edit, my execs were often telling me to, quicken it.
Oh yeah, that's very unusual.
But
I've
it's been very nice, it's been good. And but I'm a huge fan of that. Yeah, if you give me all the freedom in the world, I would just watch them.
No, I just really have to comment on how beautifully observant and without ever overstaying. It's such an emotionally connected approach. So I was just curious about how you framed your how you went in, and obviously these things change as you start shooting. Maybe I could ask Joe and Steve a little bit about. I mean, you also have quite a unique vision. I think people might want to know what mushroom was consumed in the genesis of the show. I do, and we can have that conversation offline if you'd like to. But yeah, how did you get this idea across to people who might not be able to envision this?
Well,
And
actually,
you guys are coming from a great, history of work like this, but
yeah, we ran into this problem, but we're blessed that Joe is a very talented artist and animator. And so we were like we wrote some scripts of the show and weren't able to convince our first buyer of what we were trying to do. They didn't understand it. And Joe was like, if we show them the how it's going to play in the animation, they might understand it. So he made a little short that was the first couple minutes of what became the pilot, and that once we did that, people started to, okay, this will be funny and it will have this rhythm and it will make sense. And it was a little hard to convey in the script, the sort of timing and the pacing and the human reactions and how comedy would come from the way people were looking at each other and all that subtlety that we tried to put in the show.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that just to add to that, I think that like especially with the like animation as a medium, I think just that landscape, there's we wanted to, as far as like the comedy goes and that sort of thing, I think people are used to a very specific kind of way that comedy is presented in animation. And I think that, Steve and I talked a lot about the Coen brothers and like throwing out like um, sort of that level. If you're watching Big Lebowski, if you read the Big Lebowski script, like that's not a necessarily a laugh out loud kind of a script, but it's a very funny movie, and a lot of it is sort of the comedy is done through the performance of the characters, and it's trying to lean into certain natural things about and poses and that sort of thing. So when Steve and I did the script, I think a lot of that isn't necessarily getting conveyed, and so having something paired with a little sizzle, a little like snippet of like the show definitely
yeah.
was helpful.
You
Very
literally
cool for
are.
us, by the way, to
Oh,
be here with Hong and Jack, because sort of our goal for the show was to make an animated show that would break out of the world of cartoon and be something that could be considered alongside the great, live action things that would have that depth and humanity and that people maybe who weren't even fans of animation would tune into something that was a little different.
well, that has very much been the case with this show. I mean, this is a beloved title, not only with audiences, but critics are loving, what you've done that I've spoken to. I think I'm curious about, this finding the human in your animations, like you're talking about, and one of the most remarkable things about your show is you're watching you know, these characters kind of become more and more and more human. The further the show goes on, it's wild how you sort of invite us into into humanity just through facial expressions, the way eyes look, angles of, I mean, it's so specific, the kind of eye lines you find and the kind of micro expressions. Can you talk about when you know you've nailed a character? How do you know you found your character? Is it trial and error, or are you going in with a thought for the character and trying to land? It's a mixture.
I think it's a bit of a mixture. I mean, I'll have sketches. Steve and I will talk about it. Then it'll be like once you've kind of thought about a voice, all of a sudden that character starts to evolve and change a little bit. Um, and it's just sort of a slow evolution. And then when it gets down to um, the actual records and you start to tune in on the micro expressions, and I think you just get so used to a character kind of behaving this way and it just feels natural. But like a good example of when we did that sizzle in order to sell the show, we didn't really have any actors on board. So there's a scene where two of the DEA agents are dancing. And I was just trying to think of a way of how do you show this dynamic between these two people, but we don't have actors. But then we got Joseph Lee Anderson and Martha Kelly playing the roles, and it just changed everything. And you're like, oh, I mean, you get that, and it just really molds it forms the shape a lot quicker. Um, and then just starting to think about like the dynamic between Marshall and Francis and all these different people. Um, it feels like it kind of builds pretty quickly.
There's something funny. I'd be curious what Jack and Hong have to say about this, because in our process we have these group chats in our production and everybody's talking, and often somebody will say, like a director will be like, oh, maybe there's like funny, they'll sort of act it out a little bit for the people who are doing the storyboards. And in a way you have a lot more control, but also like, I don't know, like maybe you lose something that the actors aren't finding it themselves. I wonder
Right.
if there's any equivalent for you guys to sort of acting it out for someone. I think a great live action actor might find that vaguely insulting or something, but maybe there's a way that you guys work together.
Well, I mean, I think, the cop that relationship, especially, what's remarkable about it is it's such little is given about their connection, their backstory, but you feel the depth of their relationship all through their body language and emotions, and and it's like a relationship you fall in love with. You want to see what the next gesture they're going to make, to each other. And the Big Lebowski, and I even, there's so many interesting references. I love this moment of in Heat, when the truck is coming. I mean, I saw it. I saw what you guys were doing.
I love you. Yeah.
Yes.
Even Deadly Crime season 3 is a remake of Heat as well. So I mean, all of our references are coming out. But I thought I'd come back to Jack too. With uh, coming back to sort of your process of getting your long take. Something we do on our show quite a bit, and as there's an art to finding the character, there's an art to nailing those scenes. And I'm curious, what was your experience with long take shots before this show? What did you learn about them, and what kind of magic tricks do you use to make it happen, and the process, and sort of, I'm sure you've been asked this question before, but this is as a director, I'm curious.
Well, it's something that I'd experimented before on shows with, and it's something that I've always been fascinated by. And I had previously written a film that never got made that was all in one take, and it's something that I've always loved. The thing that I loved most about it was the element of control as a scriptwriter. It's a really strange process where everyone feels a bit more powerful. And I don't quite know why that happens, but the director feels more powerful. The actors feel more powerful because they're controlling the story for the first time rather than being asked to do, yeah, today you're doing scene 13 from episode 1, then you're doing scene 4 from episode 5, and then you're doing scene 26 from episode 6, and go. There's something very powerful about an actor going, I control the story from the start to the finish. But actually, as a writer, I also loved it because the thing that Stephen kept saying to me as we were working through the process was the camera goes nowhere without a character. The camera cannot operate independently of a character. Everywhere you go, you have to have story. And that process of working out the relay race of the episode, because each episode was essentially a relay race, but particularly most starkly in episode 1, where you were hopping between about 5 different stories that involved 5 different groups of people, all of which were surrounding the one character, the character of Jamie, but actually the camera was swapping between them all. And that thing of going, okay, I'm with the Millers in this room, and then I'm going to travel with this officer out into this corridor here. We're going to hear a bit of this story, and then we're going to go to the cells and see what Jamie's up to. That process was one I absolutely loved. I love what everyone's saying about faces. There's a quote that I love that I think I'm misattributing to Alfred Hitchcock, but it is dialogue is just the words the actors say while their faces tell the story. And it's so interesting hearing Hong talk about Mr. Loveman and actually, the thing that you were picking out from Common Side Effects, which was how beautiful the storytelling was, that it didn't need dialogue to move it along each time, that actually it was about what the faces of these amazing characters were doing. So yeah, it's an interesting thing between all 3 of us.
And the withholding too, right, of information. Again, you could have done 3 scenes of just winks and head gestures with the cops. We probably would still be, tracking it. That's a great segue to Hong, talking about the kind of environment you are creating for people like Lenny Bruce and um, uh, Lenny James. Sorry, I said Lenny Bruce, Lenny James, and um,
Lenny Bruce would also
sorry, it was amazing. Sorry.
Lenny Bruce would also have been brilliant in Mr. Loveman, I think.
And Sharon D. Clarke too was just fantastic. Can you talk about working with these actors specifically and just how you generally create the environment, the atmosphere? I just keep coming back to this. Faces were so key in your show and performances, but you have this magic of atmosphere as well. And I'm just curious, what kind of process you go through on set when you put a scene up.
Oh God. I mean, I'm so nervous and shitting bricks really before I start because
This doesn't seem like it at all from your work.
there's such good actors, I mean Lenny especially, and I really but I think like you say, Arian and Sharon D. Clarke are amazing as well, and they've been actors for so long, and I kind of come on board. So I think I was just thinking about what you said previously. I think because the show had all of these different tones, and I think on paper I was really afraid whether they could all sit together, but you don't know. It can be so academic. And so I'm always like, I'm a massive believer. Like if the emotion comes from a truthful place, then you can go as far as big as you want, and it will always be anchored by that. And I sort of, the little time we had for rehearsal, I sat down with all the actors and said, this is what I wanted, and this is what I think would, we just, it was very much a discussion. And I'm quite I don't know, on set I'm very quiet. I don't, as in I don't like mad, noisy, loud set. So me and Raimi, I always feel like me and the director and the DOP tend to set the tone of the set. And Raimi was, oh God, he's such a good man. We were so similar, and
Mm-hmm.
and we were just we just were able to talk to them really. I think um, everything that I wanted to do was always coming from a truthful place, and I think um, it was yeah. I think my job really was just to make sure, like you were just saying, like Jack was just saying earlier, you've got 8 episodes with shooting scene 3 from ep 1 and then bloody scene 20 from ep 8, and it's really hard, and also there's so many different timelines as well. And I feel like my job really is just to make sure the emotion is always connecting. I try anyway, I think. So
Well, I mean, I would say none of your actors are so empowered in your set. It reminds me when I see Mira Nair's films too. You never see, you can love films, hate films, but when you see actors engaged and empowered like they are in Mr. Loverman, you're in the hands of they've been given the trust and space, and they're around someone who's confident, and
yeah,
especially the word intimacy comes to mind when I think of your show. You facilitated so much intimacy in this show, both in conversations, dialogues, and real and intimacy. This scene at the there's a fantastic scene. It was so tastefully well, so it was. I loved. I don't want to spoil it. I'm gonna spoil things, but did you guys, with some of these scenes, did you work with intimacy court? Did you have a vision for how this scene was supposed to be, and then was it edited? Sort of talk about. Do you ever talk about this their reunion and sort of the intimacy in this moment?
yeah. We did have an intimacy coordinator, Robbie, and it was amazing. And I get very nervous shooting those scenes, and it was really nice to talk. And that scene you're talking about at the end. I feel like I had a version of it, a different version, and it's only in the last, I feel like in the last maybe 2, 3 days before the shoot, I swapped it. I decided to change it. Um, and because it's one of the things that just keeps me awake at night, how to shoot their different intimacy at different stages of, when they're teenagers, when they're in their 30s, when they're in their 40s and their 60s. I wanted it to be always be different, and a lot of the time intimacy is always on bed. I really like it stood up, and various different things. Um, but we also had a movement choreographer, and she was amazing. And I was watching these rehearsals with the movement that with the choreographer, and then something, I don't know, I feel like a couple of days later I decided, you know what, it was between her and the intimacy coordinator. He did this exercise where they were just touching each other's body, and I decided, oh, maybe I should just take that. I think that's far more tender, and I was really moved by that rather than
Mhm.
going all out, like wham bam, so to
Yeah.
speak. And yeah, it really came. It was just yeah. I get yeah, and I mean, genuinely, even though we did it, you don't quite know whether it will work. It's only in the edit. Did
No,
I?
the edit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember looking at the editor. We thought, oh God, I feel like people haven't done that since the 80s, right? It suddenly feels really radical. So if anything, it could feel really safe.
Yeah, I mean, from leading your characters into a performance and not knowing if you get in doing in the edit to back to common side effects, who you're actually executing it, you have the level of control that we're only guessing. I'm just curious, going talking a little bit more about your influences actually that went into making this show. What was your philosophy towards incorporating, either spiritual influences, visual influences from other texts, other movies like Lebowski and Heat have been mentioned, but there's so many great like disassociating but connected moments where you know something is echoing something, but it's so perfectly retrofit for what you're doing in the show. It's not just like when I do it, it's just like a sycophant homage. That's my style. But,
There's plenty of
uh,
that
you guys are
everywhere.
actually smart. So talk about how you, how you, what was your philosophy behind, shout outs when you're giving these shout outs to other shows?
I don't know that we had like a coherent philosophy. Rather, it's more just grabbing
Maybe that's
everything
why it
cool
works.
that we could possibly think of that would make it exciting and fun and dramatic. I mean, we were both very influenced and into like the 90s sort of genre of thrillers, like uh, The Fugitive.
Speed.
We talked about all the time. The Grisham kind of movies. It just seemed like in the 1990s they were making a lot of these kind of conspiracy adjacent thriller sort of movies that we're really into. And then, because we wanted to have an element of humor in it too, while also being exciting and propulsive. So anything that like blends that stuff, like, and the Coen brothers are Burn After Reading and these things that are like you're following a kind of exciting spy story, but also like a absurd, the problems that come up in everyday life as we always talk about, like, if you're a fugitive on the run and then you have to stop and get gas and the gas tank's out and then you got to go in, like that's both exciting but also like comical and
Yeah.
human and real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say, I mean, even prior to kind of movie references and stuff like that, Steve and I talked a lot about kind of a lot of, mycologists and ethnobotanists that we
Yeah.
were into, like Wade Davis and Paul Stamets
Yeah,
and,
Terrence McKenna, these
Terrence
fringe
McKenna.
characters that are just like pushing the boundaries of sanity and what's known, and like those guys often make cool discoveries and they often end up in jail or have weird
Yeah, or
bumps
like
against the law.
Lost in like South America or something.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that was like definitely like a big inspiration. And then Steve also, not to put you on the spot, but he's part of the Desert Trust, the Mojave Desert Trust Fund, and I feel like a lot of the people there are very interesting people too. That like choosing to live out in Joshua Tree, whatever, you kind of like everyone's kind of sort of fringe and just interesting. Like I mean, your friend, the tortoise expert.
Yes, she's a
Yes,
tortoise.
let's get the tortoise BG.
Well,
Let
actually,
give
we came up with
the
that
tortoise tea.
independently because we knew that there were animals that, like, there are lots of mushrooms that grow in the feces of animals. If you haven't seen our show, there's a tortoise is kind of crucial to the mushroom growing operation, and we put that in the show. And then after the show came out, a guy contacted us who lives out in Southern California. He has a farm of like 30 tortoises, and his business is collecting their feces and making it into this stuff that you can grow.
Substrate, yeah.
Yeah, substrate that you can grow mushrooms in, whatever kind of mushroom. He doesn't ask what kind of mushroom you're growing. He just provides you with the stuff. And it turns out the tortoise poop is perfect for this because it's like the tortoise doesn't extract that much. It's kind of like loose, like straw, and so it's a lot less dense than like cow manure or something. So the mushrooms can grow a lot faster in this, but there's still this sort of nutrient stuff
And
that,
get like
that
hot,
mushrooms
yeah,
need. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm curious, I'm really curious because your show's bringing together so many whether it's healthcare, politics, the environment, just street level crime, how much, and this is kind of for Jack too at some point, but the research that goes into connecting all these, like, is this something you feel you guys have to heavily research, or is this zeitgeisty stuff that this is the conversation in your head regularly? Is this something between? Can you talk about the role of research and creative inspiration, the rigor that goes into designing all these connections? Because there's so many layers in your show.
I'd be very curious to hear what Jack and Hong have to say about this. Jack in particular, I know like there's the procedure of the show is driving so much of the drama, and like what happens when you get taken to a prison station, police station or whatever. Anyway, we talked to a retired DEA agent. We talked to a bunch of mycologists. We talked to anybody who we could.
Pharmacist.
Yeah, the people we've had the hardest time getting to were people who worked at pharmaceutical companies. We just couldn't get anybody who would talk to us about that. We talked to a bunch of people who are experts on like illegal drugs and drug policy and
Scheduling.
the drug
Yeah.
war, and yeah, what would happen if something like this were introduced, and the weird procedure. And we always find that, like, the reason to do that isn't because we care that much about accuracy. It's because the truth is always so much more interesting than whatever you could think of.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also think that like it kind of started too with like just our own kind of personal stories, like it's like the with healthcare and like how much of a pain it is to kind of navigate that world. I mean, my grandpa was in hospice, and it was like hospice care in his home, and it was we had to basically prove that he was not doing well in order to keep the like basically keep the hospice equipment, or otherwise they would take
Yeah,
it.
he's like incentivized to not be better, right? Yeah.
Yeah, incentivized to not be better. And it was just so like backwards. And I'm like, this is, so thinking about that and then thinking about like, well, this thought experiment about like, what if there was a thing that sort of, disrupted all of that? What would happen? And then just all the kind of absurdity that goes along with it, could just be funny.
Also, like whenever you talk to the DEA agent to find out about DEA procedure, and then he's telling you a story about it growing up in Louisiana that's somehow like extremely interesting, not at all what you're looking for, but
That
another,
happens to me pretty regularly.
yeah, or he has some
Yeah.
strange phrase that you just want to put
Well,
in.
that's what I was going to say about your friend Kelly, who's the tortoise expert. She was just talking about like they would go out into the deserts of like Nevada, and they would, in order to look for certain like male tortoises that are rare, they would walk kind of in like raking the desert, like walking in a single file. And because of that, and you're out in like the outskirts of like Vegas, there's like dead bodies and all this stuff. So she's telling us this, and we're like, whoa, okay, like this is
Yeah.
inspiring in its own way that we
Yeah,
can.
she was telling us about how like on the highway between LA and Las Vegas, on the side of the highway, if you walk along it for a couple miles, which she used to do, like you eventually will find some drugs because people like are about to get pulled over and they throw their
You
drugs
just throw
out
it
the
out, yeah.
window. It's like, okay, we were
So the research is kind of just
Yeah.
mainlining the air of the Southwest sort of region. There's something in
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
at you. I'm curious, Jack, talking about research a bit. What kind of went in it for you? And, particularly, I'm thinking of episode 3. God damn, episode 3. Man, can you talk about, the research that went in, but also like this conversation, this interview you have with Jamie and the counselor. I'm so curious about this scene. I'm sorry, I might be switching gears here, but was it scripted this way? Was it found in the edit? I mean, you were able to communicate something that didn't happen on screen. You know what I mean? It was sort of what her understanding of this child came through it came through what he said, but through between the lines, it was just so unique and singular. I just haven't seen a lot of scenes work so well. I'm just curious about that scene, and how you found it, and also some research notes too, how you go about research.
First of all, I'm really disappointed that I don't have a friend that specializes in tortoises because clearly there's something wrong with me that I don't have that in my life. That sounds
Hey,
amazing.
she's your friend now. Well, whatever.
Yeah, all the episodes, Stephen never typed in this show. It was always me that was doing the typing, writing the dialogue. That it was about unpacking Stephen's brain. With episode 3, he just said, "This one's on you. Write a David Mamet play." I mean, this is one of my closest friends, and it's like write a David Mamet play. I mean, fuck off. Yeah, exactly. And actually,
Go be brilliant right now.
What?
Go be brilliant right now on command.
Exactly. And the truth is, it's probably the one that has the least amount of research in it, and yet probably the most because I'd already been through the research necessary for eps 1 and 2, so I was grounded in that world. I'd also more or less completely perverted my algorithm by then, so that I was just in a world of very interesting hate that I was trying to wade through, and then a lot of it was about me. A lot of it was about my bewilderment. The thing that unleashed the show for me, because Stephen had this thing at the beginning. We don't want to write a show that blames the parents. So I always had that in my head while I was writing. This isn't going to be a show that makes easy points. And actually, blame, I hope, when you watch the show, you understand that blame is spread across a whole number of different parts in terms of how Jamie turned out as Jamie turned out. But that thing about incel culture, about trying to understand what's going on in incel culture, which is largely a very peaceful culture. I've got to say, this is. I hope the show doesn't ever say incels are violent, but it does have this idea at the center, which is 80% of women attract 20% of men, and it's an idea that I found incredibly powerful. It was an idea that I think that if I'd heard that as a 13-year-old boy who wasn't very good at belonging in this world, wasn't very good at working out how to deal with the people in my life, and particularly any girls that I was even vaguely interested in, I would have, and so that was my sort of point with Ep3, was trying to plug into and understand that, and as you say, tell it through subtext rather than text. This was theatre in its essence, and theatre is a medium which suits subtext sometimes better than television does, because of the way that television is edited. I think a lot of the time in television, the subtext gets edited out in the process of pleasing our producers. And one of our strengths in this process was we didn't have to edit. We said cut at the end of the episode, and that was done. And really was. We didn't cheat anything.
I got two questions. Did you take cutaways for safety?
No. We did 2 takes each day for a week, and then one of those takes was chosen.
And just to follow up on this question, I think a question just popped up regarding this too. This question of 80%, 80-20%, this idea of hypergamy. Did this concept, maybe you can repeat the number again. There's a question that about the statistic to clear it up, but was this something that you learned about in the process of researching for this show?
It wasn't something I
How
came
deep
across
is the
before.
rabbit hole? I'm curious about what is the research for this?
Oh, well, the thing that interested me was not the top of the waterfall. The Andrew Tates of this world, where they make everything simple, and they live a life with sort of a very simple creed about what's right and what's wrong. The thing that interested me was spending time at the middle and the bottom of the waterfall, where people were talking about how they had just read Dune, or how they were in the middle of a game of Minecraft, and they were talking about a relationship that they'd had at school, or a moment that had happened at school, or a moment that happened at university, or these different situations where they were unpacking what was happening to them and how that made them feel. And that was the bit that interested me, because I didn't think Jamie would be interested in Andrew Tate. I didn't think Jamie would watch any of his videos. I think he would have been repulsed by those videos, in fact. But he would have clicked into these other places, and he was someone that's spending a lot of time in those spaces. And I can tell you, as someone that did it doesn't take too long to get into those spaces. It doesn't take too long until your entire feed is basically hate.
Wow.
It's amazing how quickly you can fall into that hole, and it's true for with younger girls. It tends to be self-harm and eating disorders that you can fall into that hole of. With young boys, it tends to be misogyny and hate.
What was that stat you said about 80% of women?
80% of women are attracted to 20% of men.
Or what?
So 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. So in order to fit in order to have a normal life, in order to even attempt to be someone that has success in life, with women, with jobs, with life, with everything, you've got to work out how to either break that cycle, or absorb yourself into the bit which says that's not going to happen for me. That's not going to be the world that I live in.
Yeah, and these are statistics that junior high kids are
Yeah, it's a
very in
made-up
conversation
statistic.
with. It's
Yeah.
high school culture. I'm curious, did you speak with youth, like
Yeah, of course.
kids in
Yeah. I spoke with I spoke with police officers. I spoke with lawyers. I spoke with young people. I spoke with psychologists, psychiatrists. I spoke with all sorts of different people to try and build a picture. And this is the way I try and use research. I try to sort of just go. so you know it all, you've got it all in your head, but you don't sit there with a notebook with what you want how that you want the conversation to work. You write the conversation and then you go back over it, having read the notes again, and you get other people to read it, and you slowly build the truth.
Yeah. It's not a
But
documentary, right? It's not a documentary, but
it's not a
at
documentary,
the
and
same time,
people can smell research. If you write research into a script, people can smell it, and so your job is to absorb it and make it your own.
I'm really curious about the way you experienced these years versus what you portrayed, because I think what these kids are going through are completely different than how we grew up. And I'm going to put a pause on that because I'm also curious. I want to switch to Mr. Loverman for a moment too, and I gotta get all these three amazing titles. It's always these three amazing titles, guys, and it's different headspaces, but you guys are both all challenging so many things and making this bespoke, interesting, distinct. This people don't realize how hard it is to make the kind of shows you guys have put out with the specificity. But with Mr. Loverman, another thing that was so amazing is you're showing three different you're showing many phases of life, three different worlds. And one thing that really stuck out for me was just the presentation of your characters, the costumes, the amazing sort of styling, the detailing. Can you talk a little bit about that process to this work, and those collaborations? How did you go about styling your characters for their times, ages, spaces?
That was the genius of Jodie Simone, really, our costume designer. But I think the world building of Mr. Loverman is the costume, the production design, and hair and makeup. I felt, and then from that, we just sculpt it with light and framing. But it was, I think a lot of the references were in the book and in the period. But Jodie Simone was really, I remember she was so meticulous, and she would be so, she would always again find these academic reasons to do certain things the way they do. Um, and a lot of it you probably don't even know, but it makes such a difference for the actors as well. Just the little things she would put, the trinkets she would put in the pockets, just so that they could feel comfortable in that costume.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
it's Yeah, it was really important because I think I knew from the beginning that because of the different timelines, I didn't I kind of really didn't want to postmark those timelines. I genuinely think like if we get it right, even if it's a second or 2 seconds later, you will catch up and get up to speed.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, I felt and I didn't want to grade it differently. I didn't want to do any of those tricksy stuff, and so it was really important. The costume, the hair was able to do that for us as well, just to
That
kind
was
of.
your work. That was your transporting. That's how you transport people versus,
Yeah, yeah, it was, and it was
sure.
they did the heavy lifting for us, It was just
Well,
but
that's a good segue to, like, going back into research and staying true to your novel or staying true to the source material. How much was research and specifically research of the novel itself, but also the times that this is set in. How did that play into yours, especially when you're translating a work of fiction? We talk about this isn't a documentary. We don't want to necessarily we have to always add our narrative, twist on most research to make it work as a show. Um, were you fighting that battle between what was really in the doc and what's going to work best for the screen? What's really in the book and what's going to work best for the screen?
To be honest, I've been hearing you guys, and I feel I didn't really do such a deep dive research because I think Nathaniel, the writer, he did most of that was done in his writing. But of course, you kind of have to catch up culturally, and just to just so I can feel confident that I'm not doing anything wrong. Um, I think if anything, the research that I needed to do was just to make sure I could give this show um, I remember just trying to find things just to help bolster some of these ideas and themes. So, like Lenny and Arian, Barry and Morris, they have this kind of secret relationship uh, and an affair that's been for so long. And I remember seeing a documentary, and and he would have this tapping as a way of saying to his lover, "I love you." And I was just trying to, so I wanted to bring these little details in, just as a way, just to give it a bit more, just to support the writing, really, I think, if anything. But more than that, I didn't go into the kind of extensive research you guys.
In terms of staying faithful to the, I mean, research aside, but considering the book as a source, I mean, you felt at liberty to kind of lift these moments in the scene work itself. Did you stick with the book pretty uh, pretty strongly,
Yeah,
or?
I don't know. I mean, I think Nathaniel. I think this. I mean, the book is massive. The story is massive, and I think Nathaniel. I don't think you can cover. You have to make certain sacrifices, right? And I don't think he could tell. Those were the decisions that Nathaniel wanted to do, and he chose to tell the story in this way. And I think, and those decisions were, yeah, I felt the DNA of the book was still there. To be, if you ask me, I just felt, I think if maybe, I don't know. I remember there was a screening, and I met up with Bernadine, and I get so nervous, right? She's this kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's Bernadine, isn't it? Booker
Yeah.
Prize. And so I get so nervous in front of her, and you get so scared whether, is she going to be happy? Will she be okay? And she said something like along the line that, she felt, we probably eked out, or maybe made eked out more of Barry and Morris's relationship. But which is strange, because I remember when I read the book, I loved that relationship, and I felt that was the ticking time bomb for me in the book, and
Mm.
through that you get to see, you get a window into the different, the church, into the different worlds of this family. Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I answered your
Yeah,
question.
no, it's just talking process, man. This is just, uh, getting to
I mean,
know
I thought
process of
he kept
adaptation.
the humor of the book as well, and he kept this lightness that was in the book that I really loved. Um, yeah, yeah, I think, yeah, I
Yeah.
think you.
Well, I think we might have some questions coming up here. Am I right about that, or am I wrong about that? Because in case I'm not seeing them, or Q&A. I'm gonna ask some questions that are coming in here, um, as we're getting into this section. Um, this is a question from Catherine. What besides a sizzle helped you sell your show? Is there anything else you wish you could have or should have done? Well, I guess you did what you needed to do, sell it, but
We're all here, so we. I don't know about how to sell it best. I feel like there are some people who are out there who are very good at that. Um, we had some art and some demo, and then Joe had the sizzle reel, and that really made it seem real. I don't know. It seems harder to sell. I guess Hong, you had the book, and Jack, how did you go about selling your show?
Uh, we just talked. I mean, like, actually, by the time we took it to Netflix, we had three scripts. So when
Okay.
we walked into the room, they already were very keen on the show, and more or less said she wanted to do it in the room. So our first meeting was a very lovely meeting. Mostly when I'm selling shows, it's that process of going, do I do the pictures and the you know what I mean? Like, to go with the words thing. And sometimes I do it just to stop people looking at me quite as intently because I find it that bit so
did
difficult.
you can I ask just for the audience? Do you pitch online, and did you come with materials as well
We,
for
we
your pitches?
pitched that in the room, but mostly I pitch online because quite a lot I'm pitching to Americans, and I don't live in America, so I do a whole variety of different types of pitches. the last pitch I did, I had uh, about 10 minutes of slides, but I constructed the slides to work that they changed every 5 seconds. So it was literally like a sort of an assault for the first.
If
Actually,
you weren't controlling it.
it's about 6 minutes of just kind of like and my colleague Mariella was pressing the buttons and she did it very well. And then they just had my face for 15 minutes, and then they had a little bit of pictures towards the end. But yeah, no, I find the process of people. I'm autistic. I don't really like people looking at me. But I do recognize that that's a necessary part of the process, that they do want to look at me at some point.
Oh, they want to look at you, Ben. Trust me. Um,
It's not a face you want to look at, really. If I could do it with a mask on, I think that might make my life a lot better.
maybe the next show is about a mushroom that not only heals you, but turns you into the 20%. It's not even a funny joke. It's not even a funny joke. Go to the next question, open question. An aphorism I hear here is that the theater is the actor's medium, cinema is the director's medium, and TV is the writer's medium. Do you agree, or not, and why? We'll start with Hong.
Oh my God. Oh, gee. I mean, I think theatre is very much the writer's medium. I don't agree that TV. I don't agree that. I think TV and film, is a very much a collegiate thing. You can have this beautiful form script, and then it still needs realizing. But it's not just the realization. It's also, and then you got all of these different process, the sound design, the edit, and all of that stuff. And which is the edit is a whole different beast,
Yeah.
I don't think one can. I don't know. I don't think one can function without. I don't think a director can kind of survive without the writer,
I
and
agree.
vice versa. I don't. I know like TV is often seen as the writer's medium, and film is seen as director medium. I think that the two of them are very similar. It
Yeah.
still needs somebody to just put it on paper in a way that allows the director to then hopefully realize it visually. But I think theatre truly is a writer's medium.
Jack, you ever thought of it?
I think the problem comes, and I think it is a problem that is really apparent right now, is when film becomes the producer's medium. And I think there are, which is not to say producers aren't incredibly vital and an incredibly vital part of the process. It's just that sometimes that top down becomes quite difficult at times, and they're juggling. The reason why it becomes the producer's medium is because they're juggling things from above, and they're juggling thoughts as to what other people are thinking. You know what I mean? Like, and sometimes it can really encroach on the whole process. And I've definitely had moments like that. I think TV gets falsely ascribed to the writer. I've just done a show. I've just done a show called Lord of the Flies, and it's directed by Mark Munden, who I've worked with quite a few times, and I've got to say he is the author of the show. I am very lucky to have worked on his show. And when you watch it, you can feel his authorship. I think it depends from project to project and what you're working on and how it feels. It's false to ascribe anything to anyone. The one thing none of them can be is when it's producer led, which is not to say I don't love producers, because I really, really do. It's just that's not the way that these things should work. They have to be artist led. That's the whole point, whether it's actor, writer, or director.
What Jack is saying is it's the network's medium at the end of the day, everybody.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when it goes
Totally
wrong,
joking. Totally joking.
you know.
Uh, so I'm completely joking about that. Steve, Joe, thoughts?
I
It's
mean,
an animation.
I agree with Hong, and I think that we wouldn't be able to make the show without all of the incredible animators and storyboard artists and designers and editors. I mean, it's an ensemble situation, and I don't think that it makes a difference whether it's TV or film. I think that they kind of all have their challenges, and I think it's just a case by case thing. I think that there might be one TV show or film that's got more focuses on the editing, another thing that has more focus on the writing, but you know, I kind of love that. I think that's a fun challenge, and with common side effects, I mean, it was such a kind of a big organic beehive, way of working. Just it'll be a thing where like a lot of the time Steve and I will have an idea that we'll sort of tee up, and then somebody will execute it in a way that we really didn't imagine, and sort of like elevates it in a way. So and there's a kind of a fun reliance that we all have on each other. Our editor, a phenomenal editor, presents to us something that we just didn't even think about, and it really just changes the way we kind of like look at how the pacing of this episode or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I think I think at the end of the day too, my 2 cents is that sometimes this idea of whose medium, or this idea that we need to ascribe an owner to a medium is already kind of a toxic thought. I mean, yes,
yeah,
work requires, ego and ownership and authorship and all those things to make it on some level, but these are collaborative efforts, and a lot of times, you know, just you know that being consumed with the idea of ownership is sort of an ego-driven thing and can lead to just a lot of weird steps in life.
Yes, I was gonna say it's hard because you need to balance, like, writer, director, whatever. You want to have a clear vision that you protect. At the same time, like the more you let it go, I find the more you let other people help you, the better it's going to become. And it's a
yeah,
hard balance to strike. But the more I learn about the greats, they're all like the great, even these people we think of as, master auteurs or something, like they're letting the actors get involved. They're smart and they want to, the more they just
yeah,
sort of cultivate a thing that manifests itself instead of like being like,
exactly.
it's my
Yeah.
vision.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
an audience, this is coming from the people who did Common Side Effects. This is like a very integrated, singular feeling show, So it's the result is, whether it feels singularly authored or not. I mean, that's not all that is not, it's so cohesive with all the influences that you take in, and that's a real testament.
Well, look, I mean, the last thing I'd say is that, like, just to go back to your first question about kind of like the initial idea and taking it to fruition, to the final, I would say that common side effects, I won't speak for Steve, but I do for myself. I would say that it did not turn out the way I was wanting it to turn out. It came out, I think, better and different in a lot of ways. It was just a different thing, and I think it sort of evolved into a thing that I didn't necessarily. I understood, kind of had some sense of the shape of it, but like, there were a lot of new things that sort of sprouted from that slow evolution, which was great. I'm grateful for.
Yes, agree. And we sit now in the edit, we're in season 2 and we're sitting there and, the editor, the supervising director will say, "Oh, I don't think this is what this character would do." And there's no one owns that. It's a collaboration and it's beautiful.
Well, I got some more Q&A questions here. This is from Sarah Bromley. For Jack, can you talk about your casting process for Jamie? Would love to hear Owen Cooper's amazing performance. You also had amazing performances from Stephen Graham, Aaron Doherty, Ashley Waters. There's a lot of, I know Jamie's getting all the love, but there was performances in this are strong throughout, and he looks great because you have so many generous people surrounding him who are putting him over quite a bit in scenes, especially Aaron Doherty in that amazing moment. But you want to talk about this your casting process?
Absolutely. The first thing I want to say is producers are artists too. I somehow felt like I suddenly went, producers aren't artists, and they are. And a lot of my best friends are producers. Owen was a beautiful thing that happened. And I wasn't in the room when he walked in. I did get a call from Stephen afterwards to say, "There's this kid and he's amazing." We were very lucky on this show with all our young casting, actually. You know, Kane and Fatima and Amari, and we got a lot of beautiful young actors, and Shaheen Baig, who's our incredible casting director, just managed to find people from unusual places. And I think that was the secret to it. You know, like, you know, that she puts adverts on Facebook Marketplace, and weird places like that, because she says grandmothers are there, and grandmothers will then take that to their grandkids and go, "Oh, have you thought about doing this?" And so what you're looking for is advocates in all sorts of strange places that might then bring you that gem. And Owen was a true gem, and he remains a true gem, and his parents are lovely, and he's going to be all right, I think, and he's going to have an incredible career.
Was acting experience something that was important to you when
Uh,
you were with
and
Elizabeth?
Owen doesn't. Owen, we thought he didn't have any acting experience. He did have some. He was part of this group, Drama Mob, and but he did that every now and again. He wasn't, he wasn't at drama school or anything like that. He just was naturally brilliant. And what would happen with all of them in their final audition is that they'd be Stephen Grahamed, which is Stephen would sit opposite them and do what Stephen does, which is hit them with a wave of intensity like you've never felt before. And it was about how they cope with that wave and turned it into something. And Stephen is an incredible judge of talent. Phil Barantini is an incredible judge of talent. Both Phil was an actor. Phil met Stephen acting, so they both love actors, and they both, the between the three of them, Shaheen, Stephen, and Phil, they found the most incredible company.
That's amazing. I imagine Owen's first time with. Can you describe how his first session
Time
with how
Stephen
his
went,
session
yeah.
with Stephen went? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way Stephen described it is he sort of said to him before, "I'm your dad, you're my son. Right, let's go." And it was all about whether they could sort of, yeah, meet his face. And I can tell you from the script sessions, from all sorts of different moments with Stephen, meeting his face is not easy. and and they
Yeah.
and they, and they met his face with and Owen just took whatever he threw at them and passed it back to him. It was beautiful.
That's so amazing. I'm meeting his face on a screen is already
But no, this was in the room. He was in the room.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, I'm saying I can't imagine being in person, just even
oh, he's quite something, Stephen Graham. Yeah,
presence on the
yeah,
screen.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
he wow. I mean, another just you could just feel the pores, his pores in the show. It's like uh
It's the sixth thing Stephen and I have made together, and every time he astonishes me, and every time he finds layers that I didn't think he'd find. The last episode of Adolescence is sort of my love letter to him,
I
which
was
is
gonna ask about that, like what went into even considering to show the after this like
but just
later
just
phase.
that was part of it right from the start. And it contains the crucial piece of information. Jamie says, "I'm going to plead guilty," so we know that he is now
Right.
going to go to jail for this crime. But being given that opportunity to show a confused, beautiful, raw, man in all his colors was
Yeah,
just
I
an
swear,
amazing thing. And
whether he's throwing paint on the car, whether he's
yeah,
holding women as
stuff.
hostages.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Singing, and do you know what I mean? Like, it's all of him. It's all of him, and Stephen is one of my very favorite people in the world, and I'm so pleased we got the opportunity to celebrate him, and I'm so pleased he's been celebrated since, because he deserves every minute of it.
No, it's a gift. He's a gift. Let me move forward. Mito Taha has a question. Case in Boiling Point works great as both film and a series. What are your thoughts on going from an original idea to deciding what format or form it should take? Uh, Steve, do you want to take this?
About boiling point?
Yeah, well, boiling point and works. The question is works great as both a film and a series.
That sounds like a Jack question.
Well,
Oh, Jack, sorry, boiling point. What are your thoughts on going from an original idea to deciding what format or form it should take? Sorry.
I mean, it's a weird thing. I've worked in theatre, film, TV, and radio, and it's a weird thing where you kind of go, "Oh, right, this is a TV show," and I wouldn't say I'm always right, but it's always just an instinct thing. There's not any sort of moment where I'm sort of going, "Oh, it's got this, this, and this, so therefore it's got to be this." I mean, TV eats story, so if there isn't enough story happening, then you'll struggle to tell it in TV. Um, uh, but 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 I think some of the elements that you take that you use in one particular medium can be used in the other. And sometimes it's right to do that. That like I say, episode 3 of Adolescence is essentially a play, and works on those terms. Whereas, I wrote Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and normally in a show you've got maybe 16 scenes maximum, and that's got I think about 100, because it needed to propel at a pace. It needed to behave in a different way from theatre, and yet it's very theatrical, but theatrical in a 19th century way. So there's rules, but there's also no rules. Is what I think in answer to that question.
Yeah. Um, I'll move on to the next question. Well, and also some of it is just deciding if a work is good enough to make into TV or movie. How do you even know if something is good enough to create? And it's also how your mind interprets material too, which is very subjective and personal. Um, Here's a question for Hong. Do you do you do a table read or something similar with actors to hear how your dialogue is shaping? Jack, you can also answer that too.
In TV, you do a table read. I think I think it's almost uh, required. And we did have a table read. I can't remember. I don't know if we read 2 episodes or maybe 3 episodes. It's a while ago. Um, I mean, it's interesting because I know in the room and talking to some of the actors always find table reads a bit weird because it sort of doesn't really do much. And then I would hear stories. I don't know. I don't know if it. I think I don't know if they're lying, but I heard some mad story about this. There was a table read for some big American studio, and from the table read, they decided to swap around to change actors and stuff. So, um, but I don't. I think I like table read just because I think it's the first time I'm able to hear the script, regardless whether there's acting or not. I there's a kind of cadence, there's a rhythm, and I think it's really nice just to understand whether some things are maybe kind of maybe I don't know how to say it, but maybe it's not moving in the same rhythm in the way that I had it in my head, and it's always I think is yeah. I personally like it, but
Yeah.
I actors some actors do
I
struggle.
get I get scared when actors find moments in table reads and feel like this is what has to happen on set. And recreate this and you're just like I'm shaking in my boots every time a moment happens in the table read. I just am like I hope we forget this as soon as possible. I don't know, Jack, do you
But and
do
the wrong things, I think they're quite dangerous because the wrong things suddenly become funny, and the right things aren't funny, and then you're sort of stuck in this sort of like, oh, we should change this, and it's like, no, that's not the thing. The thing that I love, and TV doesn't give enough time for, is rehearsals, and that opportunity to sit in a room with an actor and just talk about their character and let their character change your writing and let your writing change their playing, and do you know what I mean, that, and just sort of finding each other, which obviously is standard practice in theatre, but in TV we don't do enough of it.
Do you implement that on in adolescence?
Adolescence started with 2 weeks of rehearsals. We rehearsed for 2 weeks and we shot for 1 week.
Wow.
So it was all about rehearsing.
Do you how about, and how does improv sort of affect? Do you do much sort of no lines kind of stuff when finding
Uh,
character?
Sometimes, but I think I do a lot of rewriting when the actors are in the space, and that I think is the best thing that happens in the rehearsal, where you just go, oh no, she shouldn't say that, and suddenly the scene comes alive when you sometimes it's just as simple as cutting the line, and suddenly the scene is alive again. Yeah, it's getting to the edit, and that was the interesting thing about Adolescence, was the edit process was in the script. So you would have these script discussions really quite far into our process, because we were still trying to fix things that might, with episode 2 of Adolescence, I was rewriting until the third day of shoot. Yeah, it was yeah.
That's sometimes you need to feel the flame on your ass to get the idea. Did you block shoot? This is for Hong and Jack. Did you block shoot all every episode, or was it you know in pairs of twos? Or
I don't know what block shoot means.
block shoot means you shoot all 6 or all 4 episodes at once. Like for me on my show, I have 6 episodes. I could be shooting episode 6 or 1 on any given day, just because.
Well, because of Adolescence, we only shot the single episode. So we did 3, 1, 2, 4, and
You were
we
one
just
at a
had
time.
3 weeks on each one, and then yeah.
I had a question about the shooting of Adolescence. So you probably shot each episode a couple times, right? Like a couple
10
times.
times minimum. 10 times minimum.
You shot each one 10 times minimum. And did you find that you ended up using like the first, or the, like, oh, we're always using the 8th take, or like the
On every episode, bar episode 1, we used the last take. On episode 1, we used the second take.
wow.
So it's a really, that was for a really, it was because, and that was Stephen led. Stephen was like, I think what we found in that we never found again. There was a moment we found that we never found again. But then with episode 2, we literally hadn't finished. The only episode which actually showed the complete story was the last take.
And can I ask, is the camera choreography always the same in all 10 takes?
No, Matt would change it, and Matt would constantly be finding different things each time. So I think the proof of concept of the one shot, because the first episode we shot was episode 3, and that was the moment when I relaxed about what the one shot could do. Because even though the camera wasn't being thrown around and doing all sorts of different things like that, it was actually shooting the hardest thing, which is a conversation where you couldn't shoot people's faces. So you were, when you're shooting a conversation conventionally, you'd have a camera on each face, and you'd be cutting between the 2 faces. What Matt and Phil found when we were rehearsing it, and Matt had his camera out from the very first day of rehearsals, was when we could see people listening, when we could trust that 12 lines of dialogue could just be covered on one face, because it was so interesting to watch Aaron listen. It was so interesting to watch Owen listen, and he was constantly working and discussing, and that was the big discussion with all our producers and partners as well. We need to be on Aaron's face for this bit, but it was so interesting watching him find that and finding how to capture the story each time. He's a truly brilliant young man, Matt, and he is extraordinarily young considering how accomplished he is.
Yeah, I think episode 3 was the one that really made me realize, because it's just 2 people talking, but it's so important
What the camera's doing.
point you decide who is listening, right? Rather, the easy bit is who's talking, but and it's this, there's this shape to it. Dynamic changes, and
I mean,
Yeah.
You didn't
that's
cut
what
in that conversation, right? Am I tripping? You didn't have a cut in that conversation.
no. We didn't have a cut in any of the episodes. So it was always we never cheated. It was pure each time.
How did you convince I'm not gonna ask. The,
They were up for it. They were excited by it.
no coverage too, no rope. You jump without a rope.
No. And just that thing of if you're on Ashley Walter's face, I mean Ashley Walter's face is incredible, but if you're on Ashley Walter's face and he doesn't say anything for 15 seconds, that's it. You're on Ashley's face while he doesn't say anything, and that's the wonderful thing about the show. You're trusting his face to tell the story.
Yeah, the typical fear in our medium is that that's a switch off moment, right? Or that's what the projector will be before you shoot it. So, guys, we're kind of coming to the end of this panel. I thought just to finish, we could, if you guys have already started asking questions to each other. Did you want to ask each other things? I mean, it's so cool where you guys are in the world at this very moment with your shows. You're all here, and you're on top of the
I've got
game.
a question for Hong, which is casting Arian. Now, Arian is one of my favorite actors. I've worked with him before, but he was an unusual choice, I think, because he'd mostly been in the fantasy world, and he hadn't, you know what I mean? Like, he'd done a lot of fantasy and hadn't been given the opportunity to have his wings in drama enough, I think, because he really deserves those wings. What was the process like was it about chemistry reads with Lenny? Was it how did you go about casting him?
We didn't have a chemistry read between Lenny and Arian. We had a chemistry read between Lenny and Sharon.
Right.
Arian. Oh, I mean, I'm a fan of Arian as well. Before working with him, and I think the casting director brought him into the casting. I was there. I read a couple of scenes with him, and it wasn't quite right, but I felt there was something. I don't know. I think he was. I really like Arian, and I wanted to do a couple of more. We did another one after that, and yeah, I I adore him because I think he has this sensitivity
Mm.
that I don't know how to say it, like even if I see these fantasy shows, I see these moments, but you don't really, so you bring them into the room, and it's only when they're in the room and when you're working with them, do you really feel it a bit more? Um, yeah, I loved him. And Aaron was just always, and we would always be talking, and he was really welcoming of me to direct him as well. And yeah, no. I adore him. I think he's fantastic.
Me too.
A nice little pause of silence. I wasn't cutting, I was just going to let it roll.
This is really a question, but I think this is the thing that I think is so brilliant about Adolescent is everybody, when you do a take like that, right? Everybody, because it's so dangerous and so risky, you don't see shows like that. You just because it's one take. There's so much danger in that. Every actor has to be fucking right up there because if they're not, it can harm a moment, it can harm a scene, and I think it's one of those just. It's really, I thought it was brilliant.
One of the things I loved about the show is we had no day players. We had no one that was coming in to do a day and then going home again. And do you know what I mean? Like, which I understand is a reality to our industry and is okay, but it was really lovely that everyone who worked on the show was doing 2 weeks. And that meant that if you're playing a police sergeant who has 2 lines, you're there for the 2 weeks and you build a character and you build a complexity. And I think you can really feel the work that everyone put in, and no one took it for granted. Everyone was sort of just kind of leaning in and making themselves be part of it. So it became this sort of beautiful team game where everyone was fighting for each other and supporting each other, and I loved that about it.
Yeah, you feel it, and it's what makes the world feel so real and authentic. And we do a lot of oneers on Deadly Crime. It's one of our signatures, but I will always shoot coverage because I will get those notes and I will have to change
Yeah,
it.
I would do that. I get so scared because I feel like, God, if it fucks up in the edit, I'm fucked.
And no one's gonna be like, oh, the camera's wrong or the act. It's gonna be this guy. So I get my insurance. Like I would get the cutaway. You're shooting my man, but I'm getting this just in the dicky. You might have an invisible cut just to deal with notes. But I think when you go in with such a singular vision and it's expressed and everybody's on board, the oneer is just, but you figure it out. Over the course of one day, 2 day, by day four, it's your language and what seems like an impossible feat to get everybody in concert working together to land this, you know, thing that can be a 10-minute take. It becomes kind of what you do, and nobody wants to drop the ball, in a take. And
I would really encourage it. I would really encourage everyone to try it because it is really, really. I really love doing it, and I think
how about
everyone involved in the
a
show loves
oneer
it.
in common side effects? How
We've
about
talked about, well, we're
homage
experimenting
to
with things like
adolescence?
this. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's fun to watch stuff and learn from these techniques and see what you can do in animation.
You're on mute, Joe. Joe, you're on mute.
I was just saying, all of season 2 is going to be one shot.
Yeah.
We need
There's one
one
guy gonna draw the whole thing.
one episode is a oneer, and it comes from this. We know where it came from. I think you should do it. It would be breakthrough animation. I think on that note, guys, I really want to thank you for your time here. This has been a crazy conversation. Like I said, I could talk to all three of you, all four of you, in separately about your shows. They're really remarkable achievements, and you should really be enjoying this moment. This is an amazing time that you're in, and the work is being celebrated, guys. The work is being really received well out here. And Film Independent, we want to thank Film Independent too for being able to host this amazing conversation. I hope it's been educational for people. Everybody here has worked extremely hard, and I hope some of the notes can trickle down into your productions as you get going forward. Is there any final thing I need to do? I think we're probably going to be signing off that way, and everybody have a blessed day.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks,
you
thanks
very much.
everybody.
It's nice to meet you guys.
Nice
Appreciate
meeting
it.
you guys.
And congrats
Cheers.
on your amazing work.
Yes, congrats.